Hello everyone, welcome back to the Odds Now YouTube channel for your latest daily rundown ahead of the action at the 2026 PDC World Championship with me, Matt Hill. Hoping for better results than yesterday where I had a bit of a wipeout day, unfortunately. Just one of those, nothing seemed to quite go right. Starting with Andreas Harrison versus Motomu Sakai. Backed both players for a ton plus finish. Harrison got a 1-4-1 very early, but Sakai never really got a look, to be honest. Harrison was ice cold on the outer ring, to be honest. Every time he needed to finish, he did. And fair to say, Sakai regressed a tad, which probably expected. But and then a really disappointing one for me with Dirk van Duijvenbode going out to James Hurrell. I backed Dirk for his quarter at 11-1. He was into sort of where he's halved in price after that performance against Andy Barton's. I always felt with Dirk it was going to be about getting past those first two games because he is vulnerable, especially short format. Game where he's favourite, he's always vulnerable. And, fair play to Hurrell. He averaged 70 in that first set, went 1-0 down, but he's ended up hitting 10 180s and winning it with a set to spare as well. So it was a really good performance. Dirk's doubling did go off the boil, particularly at the back end. I mean, he had chances to take that to a fifth set, really, didn't he? And couldn't take them. So that's a tough one to take because I really was looking forward to seeing Dirk take on Bunting, and I think that would have been a really good game over 7 sets. But there we are. That's these things happen. Michael Smith to beat Neil Zonneveld. I can't complain about this one, really. I thought Smith played as well as he has done all year. I think he finished averaging just under 98. But Zonneveld, some great timing, great finishing. I question his ability to close the game out like this on the big stage. Closed it out really, really well. So fair play to him. Looking forward to seeing if he can repeat the trick against Johnny Clayton, who is obviously just a little bit more of an in-form opponent. But I didn't think Smith did anything too badly wrong. Just probably missed a couple of shots at the wrong time. So big 26 going up for Michael Smith because a lot of money slipping off his ranking, and he's got work to do, hasn't he? So we'll see how he goes. And then the most disappointing one of all, the Stephen Bunting game. I mean, I think I called it bob on, said it was a mismatch, said that 3-0 was far too big at 4-7. Unfortunately, trying to get to a more of an odds against play for the purposes of like our staking plan, and back to 180 in every set, and no 180 in set 1, 180s in set 2 and set 3. I think the game was over in half an hour. I think Kumar got one leg, so that's disappointing because it was a double staked it. It was a mismatch, but unfortunately didn't cop. But this is always the danger when you're trying to add legs and get creative. So it's just one of those. I'll write it off, and hopefully better to come today. So got our first 8 second round matches in the books. A few upsets as well, wasn't there? As well as James Hurrell. I think Andrew Gilding beating Chris Dobey has to go down as an upset as well. Played really, really well there, Gilding. Really pleased for him. But anyway, let's dive into Sunday's action then before we ramble on for too long. First game, and it's a very interesting one. Ryan Joyce versus Krzysztof Ratajski. As you can see, the market cannot split them. Each of 2, 19-20 the pair. Going to keep this very simple. Want to be with Ryan Joyce here. 2-point win on Ryan Joyce. I just feel like Ryan Joyce is constantly a little bit underrated by the market. I would have him a slight favourite for this game. That's no disrespect to Krzysztof, who's been playing well, particularly in the last couple of months. After a so-so campaign, he's picked things up. And I think, it wasn't surprising to see him play really well against Alexis Toilo. I made Toilo a bet that day because I rate Toilo quite highly, but he didn't really turn up to his usual level. Ratajski was his typical sort of clinical self. When the chances came, he took them. And I think it's an interesting match in terms of profile, because these are two quite similar players, not necessarily massive scorers, but very, very good finishers. So that's probably why the market has pitched them as an 8-2. I just think that Joyce is underrated, not only as a player, but as a match player. He really does thrive in these kind of environments. And look at his World Championship record. He made the quarterfinals on debut. He made round 4 last year, where he beat Danny Noppert, convincingly, who's another terrific match player. Only ended up going out to Luke Littler in round 4. He gave Littler the closest game that anybody managed throughout the entire tournament as well. And if you go a little bit further back to that, the year before, it was only Stephen Bunting that knocked him out. The year before that, he went out to Scott Williams, averaging a ton, but Joyce averaged 103 in defeat. So it takes a hell of a performance to beat Ryan Joyce on this stage normally. Thought he was terrific in his opening game. Yes, he wasn't really tested by Owen Bates, but he's clinical on the doubles, something like 70% on the outer ring, which is obscene, really. So I just think he should be a slight favourite here against Ratajski. So I'm happy to keep it simple and just back Joyce. 2-point win. 19-20 available with Sporting Index. And you're getting just about evens on the exchange. So, 2 points on Ryan Joyce to kick things off. Game 2 is an interesting one. Joe Cullen versus Mensur Suljovic. I'm loath to rely on Joe Cullen ever. I mean, he's an unpredictable type, to put it lightly. However, I think there's growing evidence that Cullen is a player who improves for the big stage and saves his big performances for when they're most needed. There was an indication of this in an interview that he did a couple of months ago, which I referenced on a previous video, because I found it really sort of enthralling to watch the way that he spoke about his year, which has been by and large very, very frustrating, but it's still a year that's seen him win 2 Pro Tour titles. So a reminder that he has the quality to be a top-class performer again. Just really lacked consistency this year. But last year we saw Cullen in round 1. He was made an underdog against Wesley Nyman. He came in really fired up and he beat Wesley Nyman 3-0 with a 100 average. The exact same happened this year. Came in as an underdog against Bradley Bucks, was fired up, and then produced a 100 average and won 3-0. So there's a repeating theme here of Cullen sort of turning up when he needs to, which is probably a bit frustrating for him and certainly would be frustrating for backers of his. But last year, he then went off the boil in round 2. I think he'd be very determined to make sure that isn't the case again in this time around, because he's got a winnable tie here in Mensur Suljovic, who played well. Don't get me wrong, played well to beat Dave Cameron. It was a game for the purist, that one, because it was quite a methodical pace, as Mensur's games are. It was quite gritty at times, but don't let that take away from what was a really good performance by Mensur Suljovic. I'm just not sure that we can rely on Suljovic to repeat the feat at this stage of his career, and it's been a fantastic career. And he's very like old Guy Mensur, but you do have to say that it's hard to rely on him. People could quite fairly come back to me and say it's hard to rely on Joe Cullen. Yes, agreed. I get that. But I think that Cullen, given the performance he's just delivered and given the way things went after his performance last year, will have that extra level of motivation to make sure that he keeps up to his work. And I think the difference in this game could be 180s, because if you look at the most 180s here, Cullen 8-13. I actually think that's a bit of value, to be honest. Look at the seasonal statistics. Joe Cullen is 0.32 180s per leg. Mensur is 0.22 180s per leg. That might not sound a lot, but that is a huge difference between two professionals. 0.1 of a difference per leg. So every 10 legs throughout the season, Cullen's hit an extra 180 to Mensur. That is like over a sample. That's huge when you consider the amount of legs we're talking about here. So Cullen is tried and tested the better scorer. He out 180'd Mensur across their opening matches quite comfortably. I think he hit more than double what Mensur managed against Dave Cameron in 2 games that lasted the same length of time. So I think all the evidence points to Cullen winning this 180 count. And then, unless Mensur has one of those freakish days, which do come around, but not that often, I think Cullen wins a 180 count. Therefore, backing Joe Cullen to win and hit the most 180s seems like a really solid way of playing this match. You can get 6-4 with all of the Flutterbooks, Sky Bet, Paddy's, Betfair Sportsbook, etc. Bet365 are also 6-4. That's the way I'm going to play this game with a 2-point stake. Game 3, Luke Woodhouse versus Max Hopp. I'm going to keep this one simple as well. I want to be on the 180 line here. Just need to find it. Over 8.5 180s at even money. And that is available with Betway, Bet365, Sky Bet, Paddy Power, Betfair Sportsbook could be the same. Yeah, so anyone that saw Max Hopp's first round game, I mean, this looks like the Max Hopp of old, doesn't it? Because Max Hopp was a fantastic player for a long time, the breakthrough German star. And then he went off the boil quite badly for a few years, actually. Lost his tour card, he's vanished for a long period. But he's back now, competing well on the Pro Tour when we see him. And he's had a good, quietly good year under the radar. He came up against a very vulnerable round 1 opponent in Martin Lukeman, someone who I wanted to be bang against, but unfortunately so did the market. I think Hopp ended up going off like 1-2 favourite to win that match, and so he did, winning it quite comfortably 3-1. And the key to that win was he absolutely paced it the 180s. I think he ended up on 7 or 8 in the end, which is no mean feat over that length of format. And he plays somebody here in Luke Woodhouse who also loves the maximum, and I think has personally had his best year of his career. Results do kind of show it, depending on how you interpret results. I mean, he's had good runs on majors, which he's never really done before. He probably should have beat Ricky Evans at the Grand Slam and made a major quarter-final there, but unfortunately at the game slip, he was 9-6 up, lost 10-9. But I think his reaction to that probably typifies the improvement we've seen from Luke Woodhouse this year, because I always had worries about his mental side of his game, beating himself up, complaining, going off the boil too often, going cold in games when things are against him. We're not seeing as much of that now. And when it did happen against Evans, he was able to sort of reflect and acknowledge that his opponent raced towards the line and played well, rather than beating himself up. And I like that. I think he's definitely coming on mentally as a player, and he's a very talented boy as well. Who could forget the game he had with Damon Heta last year, where Heta hit a 9-darter, but Woodhouse was terrific in coming back roaring on to win. So he's got good pedigree and experience on this stage now as well. I think he's a worthy favourite against Max Hopp, but I think Hopp will fire plenty of heavy scoring at him. but Woodhouse is capable of standing up to it. So all told, I see 4 or 5 sets here with 2 good scorers. I think Hopp looks in the groove on the treble bed, and I'm going to back the overs on the 180s here, even money on over 8.5 180s. Final game of the afternoon then, it's a no-bet game for me. Rob Cross takes on Ian White. I think you're brave. Anyone is brave backing Cross at 3s on at the minute. It may be something to do with the fact that Ian White versus Mervyn King was the lowest average game of the round, which is, yeah, it's on the face of it, it's worrying. But anyone who watched that game, Ian White for the first 2 sets was much the best. And then Mervyn King came back at him a bit. He just had a bit of double trouble, Ian White. I'm not saying Ian White was excellent, by the way, because he wasn't. But he was in command of his game until King started producing a bit of a stir and come back towards the end. But he held him off. Ian White was a player I wanted to get against in round 1 because he had a rough end to the year in terms of losing a lot of matches. But I think he showed us enough in that game in stages to suggest that he can make this competitive against Cross, who I'm still not absolutely convinced about. I backed Cordecker against Rob Cross. I wanted to be against Rob Cross, and Cordecker did not settle at all. Did not turn up. I think he averaged around 80. First couple of sets he was down in the 70s. Could not settle at all. And yeah, I just wouldn't give that form much strength, to be honest. I don't think that Cross achieved all that much by beating Decker playing that badly. And I still have the same reservations that I had coming into the tournament about Rob Cross, about his game being in a rough place, his mind maybe being elsewhere from darts. I know he says the right things, but I sometimes find it hard to believe what Rob's saying. And I've said this before, I think he's someone that looks to me like he's fell out of love with the game a little bit, maybe just from the repeated beatdowns he's suffered. Obviously 7th of 8 in the Premier League, tons of early exits at major tournaments. And yeah, I'm just loath to back Rob Cross. Unfortunately, I couldn't quite get there with Ian White. I just don't have quite enough faith in Ian White to be putting him up and backing him at under 3-1. I think if White was 7-2 here, I'd be taking a flyer. But, you know, in some places he's 9-4. And I get it, because people want to be against Cross, probably like me. But at those prices, it's a no-bet game. I'm just going to watch it. I'd be a bit gutted if White turns him over, because it'll feel like I've talked about taking on Cross and it's, you know, it's happened. But no bet for me at the current prices. On to the evening then, and first game. This is also a no-bet game for me, only one of the evening. Well, actually, there's 2. But Martin Schindler versus Keane Barry. Schindler 4-11 fav. I mean, Keane Barry played very well against Tim Pusey. He lost the first 2 legs when the Australian kind of flew out the blocks, and you're thinking, oh, yes, this is going to be another upset here, like, or a tight game at least. And I think Barry won 9 of the 10 remaining legs and looked quite good in doing so, to be honest. Very clinical. My reservations about Keane Barry would be that he did this last year in round 1, and then against Gerwyn Price in round 2, he was kind of backed for an upset off the back of that performance, and he doubled at 8%. So I think Keane Barry's career thus far, unfortunately, shows you that just because he produces a good performance one day doesn't correlate to him producing another one the next day. So it is hard to have confidence in Keane Barry. Martin Schindler's a much more solid and reliable operator. Obviously, he was kind of pushed in his opener because Stephen Burton played quite well, certainly for 2 or 3 sets before Schindler pulled away. The 180 started firing for Martin, and he got there in the end, but Burton took a set off him. That was a difficult game for Schindler to play because Burton needed to win to keep his tour card, so there was extra motivation, I suppose, and incentive for his opponent. But he was a bit slow at the traps, Martin, but once he settled in, I thought he looked really good. And as I've said in other videos, I don't really buy into this thing about Schindler having a rotten World Championship record quite as much as some others do. I think in the last couple of years, he's actually just bumped into some good performances from good players. If you actually look at the performances he's put in on this stage, like, he's been pretty good for 3 or 4 years now. The obvious exception being his first round exit last year. But like, I liked what I saw from him. I think he's the likeliest winner of this game. I don't really have a strong opinion in terms of a bet. If I was leaning one way, it would be Schindler on the handicap, which you can get sort of 4-5, and maybe adding in something with 180s. But again, feel like I'm forcing it. Keane Barry's been backed, and, you know, having watched him a couple of nights ago, I can see why. So I'm just going to watch this one. No bet for me. Gerwyn Price against Wesley Plaisier then. Looking forward to seeing Gezi again, someone who I've backed on a personal note outright for the tournament at kind of 28, 25s earlier in the season. He went right into sort of 12 or 10-1, and then when he got drawn in a quarter with Littler, he's gone all the way back out to 20-something to 1. So definitely got on at the right price, but he hasn't gone off as short as I thought he would at one point. I still fancy his chances of getting to at least that quarter-final clash with Luke Littler. He plays Wesley Plaisier here. The Dutchman, he's a player I have a lot of respect for, particularly on the floor. This is somebody who, when he wasn't even a tour card holder, made back-to-back Pro Tour finals and then won a Pro Tour as well. So we know the levels Wesley's got. He made back-to-back Pro Tour finals this year as well. So a real demon on the floor and someone to not overlook. But his stage performances haven't quite been that standard for me. He was good last year when he made it to play Peter. Like he beat Asamoto in a bit of a nervy affair. Then it was very well fancied to beat Peter Wright, and I just didn't quite hit the levels expected of him and got beat in the end. So do we have enough off Plaisier to think that he can go and slay someone like Gerwyn Price? Not for me. And particularly after watching Price against Gavlas, there wasn't much coming back from Gavlas, but Price was ruthless. Like when Gavlas did have a good leg, he was straight back down his throat. 180s were firing. I think we had 6 or 7 in the end from Price there. And always a good sign when Gezzy's hitting the 180s, because he's not, despite what you might think, he's not like, he does like a switch. So his 180 numbers aren't always like outstandingly high per leg, but when he does get in that red bit and stays there, I tend to think that's a good sign for how he's feeling, and he certainly was doing that against Gavlas. I back Price on the 180s handicap there, and I'm going to do something similar again because he plays Plaisier here, who is a very, very good 140 hitter, but doesn't hit as many 180s as you might expect for someone of his scoring quality. And I think he's there to be taken on in this market. So the handicap 180s, just to give you some context here. I mean, there's not loads that price it up. Bet365 price it up, but the feed's not pulling through here. But just to give you a bit of an idea, like Price minus 2.5 180s will be odds against. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to go on the Bet365 Bet Builder and back Price minus 1.5 180s and minus 1.5 sets. So he's got to get a couple 180s more than Plaisier, and he's got to win 3-0 or 3-1. I think he's more than capable of doing that. That's an 11 to 10 chance. That's the way I'm going to play Gerwyn Price versus Wesley Plaisier. Okay, 2 games to go then. Luke Littler returns to the stage. He's playing Davies. I thought Dai played really well. Backed him to beat Mario van der Bahada at 2-1 in his opening round game. That was partly because of concerns over van der Bahada, to be honest, which kind of proved to be correct. But you can't take anything away from him. Big stage debut, played really well, looked settled up there until the last leg, that is, where he fluffed a load of match start and then eventually stumbled over the line. This is a different kettle of fish for him, isn't it, against Littler? I think you've got to pay Littler huge respect here. The 3-0 is 2-7. It's hard to foresee any other outcome, to be honest. I'd be really, really surprised if Davies managed to take a set off him. Like, as well as, like, I took Labanauskas to win a set pre-tournament against Littler at 9-1. Darius could not have played much better. And Littler won 3-0 with 102 average. And most people were saying, like, yeah, it's an okay start for Littler. 102 average, 3-0 win. That's a phenomenal start for anyone. We've just been spoilt with what Littler produces that we think that's normal. And to be honest, you'd have to say of the other big lads, even though there's been some impressive performances, he still has looked a cut above. And he's not even got out of first or second gear yet. That's why he's such a hot favourite for this tournament. I don't see any problems with Dai Davies here. You can definitely look at Bet Builder options. For the purposes of YouTube, I'm just going to leave this game. I think you could back the 3-0 Littler and combine it with something 180 related, should you wish. But those prices will obviously shorten as they go now, because everyone's going to want to get with Littler in some kind of shape or form. So there's maybe not that much value there now. And I would probably just watch this game. But if I was having a bet, it would be 3-0 Littler and something on the 180 handicap line. Okay, last game of the night then. It's a no bet for me, but I will be watching with great interest. Damon Heta. I kind of said on my preview outright that if Heta can win his first couple of games, he becomes a different prospect in this tournament. Now, he's done job one, beat Steve Lennon. He had his little wobble, as he does, but he came through it. That's the crucial thing for Damon. I feel like he needs to come through a couple of wobbles before he can really settle into a tournament, because the wobbles have been what's taken him out, unfortunately. And it's been a combination of bad closing out and bad luck this year. Not one more than the other for me. You know, it's certainly been a bit unfortunate. There's been a few games that he deserved to win that he didn't, but there's also been some games that he's thrown away. Anyway, he took care of Steve Lennon, as mentioned. He now plays Stefan Bellmont, which probably is a better game on paper than Raymond van Barneveld, who Bellmont beat. I don't know. I actually like Bellmont, and was quite bullish on him to beat Barney. But I think you do have to say that over the course of the year, on all the seasonal data, there's a gap between these two. So it's all going to be about whether Heta's floor and stage differences in game rear their head. I thought he was good enough against Steve Lennon to make me think he can take care of Bellmont. Would you want to be getting stuck into someone who's had as many first round and second round losses as Heta this year on the stage at 1.3? Probably not. So that's why I ended up coming up on the side of no bet. Bellmont if Bellmont's on a going day, as we saw against Barneveld, I mean, he finished fantastically in that game. Can he sustain that level of finishing? No, I would say. So you can expect a little bit of regression from Bellmont. He's not a big 180 hitter. He's just a sort of very consistent ton 40, ton. And that's what keeps him in legs. If Heta could just switch on that little bit of sprint speed that he has in the scoring stakes, 171s, 174s, then I think Heta's treble 19 hitting could be the difference in this game. I wouldn't be surprised to see Bellmont take a set or even two maybe, but I do think Heta, if it got, to be fair to him, I will say, if it goes 2-2, big questions asked of Heta, because his bottle will be under it again, the crowd will be getting involved, and the old memories of all those other painful defeats will be coming back in. That'll be the mental test that he needs to pass. But as I say, when he wobbled against Steve Lennon, he responded well. Interested to see if Bellmont can put him under the same pressure. I'd probably lean towards Heta winning this 3-1. I'm not going to force a bet. Okay, so that concludes my bets for the second day of round 2 action. Just to reconfirm, Ryan Joyce to beat Krzysztof Ratajski is 19-20 with various sports books. 2-point win. I'm going to have 2 points on Joe Cullen to beat Mensur Suljovic and hit the most 180s at 6-4. Couple of points on Luke Woodhouse, Max Hopp over 8.5 180s in the match. 2 points on Gerwyn Price minus 1.5 180s and minus 1.5 sets against Wesley Plaisier at 11-10. And then just to finish off, let's have a double on the Cullen and the Price selections. That pays 4.25 to 1 at Bet365. And that takes us up to 10 points total spend for the day, which if the double cups, we'd be in a nice profit. So that's my day 2 of round 2 rundown. Hope you're enjoying the action. We've got 2 more days after this before the Christmas break. So I will be back tomorrow to preview Monday's 8 second round games. I hope you're enjoying these videos. If you are, please do give us a thumb up and don't forget to hit subscribe to the Odds Now YouTube channel. See you again soon. Thanks for watching.